Broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network. The bandwidth for this episode of the AR-15 podcast is sponsored by Patriot Patch Company. PatriotPatch.co.
Welcome to the AR-15 podcast. This is the podcast about your favorite black rifle. This show is for you. Whether you're building your first AR or you've been building ARs for years, there is something we can all do to take our black rifle to the next level.
You make this show possible by clicking through our Brownells and Amazon affiliate links. The next time you order online, go to AR15podcast.com and click through our Brownells and Amazon affiliate links. It doesn't cost you anything extra, and a small portion of your sale goes to supporting pro-gun radio like the AR-15 podcast.
Listeners, welcome back to another episode of the AR-15 podcast. We're up to 166 now, and I think I'm pretty good with that number. JD, we good with that number? What's a good number?
Yeah, I think that's where we're at.
All right, so tonight we have David, and David, I am not going to even attempt to butcher your last name, so I'd like you to interject with your name for the listeners.
Dave Famigilette from New Frontier Armory.
See, I knew I was going to get that wrong, because I was going a completely different way.
It would have been the first time, I'm sure.
Well, and David is joining us. David is, at the head of a company that is really providing to the show and our listeners a wonderful opportunity. And, we had a chance to come by his booth during SHOT Show, and we got a hands-on time with some of his outstanding products. And I know JD has a love affair with a lot of things that they manufacture. So we're really excited to have you on the show with us, David. But before we get a chance to really dive deep into New Frontier Armory, JD, why don't you tell everybody what's going on at the NRA show?
We're going to have a listener meetup at the Cardinal Hall of Fame Saturday, May 21st at 7 p.m. That's at the Cardinal Hall of Fame, Saturday, May 21st, 7 p.m. And every time I say this, somebody gives me grief for saying it right or saying it wrong, but I'm just going to abbreviate it. Jake says that if you can say Ambi, if you could give the full pronunciation of this, because y'all decided to be funny and write it differently in the show notes today, he will buy you a drink. So I don't know how solid of a guarantee that is, but if you're there and you say it to him, I wouldn't let it go. I'd make sure you hound him until he buys you a drink. We also want to thank Otis Technology. They have re-upped their partnership with the AR-15 podcast for the year 2016. We're looking forward to getting some of those products in your hands also. And, of course, we have the New Frontier Armory 9mm carbine giveaway that is in full swing. We're about a quarter of the way through, approaching 500 entries on that. And if you enter in multiple times, I'm kicking your butt out. I'll leave one of them in. But the funny names got to stop, because if I have to transfer that gun or that rifle in, Joe M. Effer, what, it's just going to look bad. It's not going to work out because you're not going to be able to pick up the gun, because I doubt that is what your official legal ID says. So I get it. It's funny. But sign up under your real name, because that would suck if that's you, and then we just have to move on to the next person. Right, Reed?
Well, I don't know. If you send us your name in wrong, we might just have to pay New Frontier Armory for the rifle itself out of our pockets, and then figure out how we're going to divide it amongst the show. I think we can do that. Couldn't we, David? We'll pay like 20% premium on it.
No problem. And I told JD if the guy signing up is Mickey Mouse, if they're coming to pick that rifle, and I expect full costume, or they're not getting it. So.
Well, full costume and a Nevada driver's license that says Mickey M. Mouse. All right.
We're thankful to New Frontier Armory for giving us that opportunity. You guys can sign up in the show notes of any of the recent shows. The links there. Also at Facebook, facebook.com/AR15 podcast. You can also go to the network site and pick it up there at firearmsradio.tv. Click on the AR-15 podcast page. It'll take you a link right there. It's a simple questionnaire to fill out, and you get you entered to win that 9mm carbine.
And just remember, even though we have a sense of humor, the ATF does not have a sense of humor. All right, so David, we really did have a good time looking over your booth at the SHOT Show, but I've never been into your store, so we're going to let JD kind of let you catch us up on what it is that New Frontier Armory does out there in Nevada, and tell us all about the store, and then tell us about the internet side of things, and your new manufacturing side of things as well.
So I've been going. I think it's been about 6 years now that I have been traveling across the Las Vegas Valley. Now, when I say traveling across the Las Vegas Valley, it's about a 45-minute to an hour trip from my house to New Frontier Armory. The crew out there has always been on top of customer service and always willing to bend over backwards to make a deal or help find a part or order a rifle that's impossible to find. And Ashley and some of the others that have helped me over the years have just made it into my local gun store, even though I drive past probably about 5 or 6 of them on the way out there. So when this opportunity came up and we were talking to David at SHOT Show, I got really excited because I know not only are the products, grade A, but the customer service too with New Frontier Armory and the team that's there is top of the line also. So, David, I would just like to ask you a couple questions so our listeners can get to know you a little bit better.
Sure, of course.
What is your background with firearms?
I grew up in a family. My grandfather was an avid shooter. He was actually an avid trap shooter and a little bit of bird hunting. So I grew up around them. They were always. My father wasn't really into it, and I didn't have any brothers or anything like that. It wasn't really readily available to me to just go out and shoot like we do out here in the West now that I live out here, where you can just drive 20 minutes and go shooting, and everybody has 100 guns each. I grew up in Connecticut. I was able to shoot. I did some rifle shooting as a child and some shotgun with my grandfather, and it was always a reward for doing good in school. So I didn't get to shoot as often as I wanted to. But after that, 18 years old, I joined the military, and I was a combat engineer in the Air Force. Traveled all over the world, and I think really when I took a serious interest in it was when I got stationed in Germany in I guess 2001 or so, right after 2001. I met up with some guys there that were really into hunting and stuff like that, and it was one of those things where everybody complained about Germany. Oh, it's impossible. You can't have guns. But one of the ways to have guns there is to hunt. So at first, I got into it more so that I can have my guns. I got into the hunting program there, and then after being with some of those guys for quite a while and getting into it, I got really deep into hunting while I was there, and that became my main focus. And I stayed with mostly sporting guns. I like to shoot. I shoot competitive skeet to this day, and I like to shoot sporting clays and more long range rifle and that type of stuff. So I picked that up there and really got into reloading. Same guys that kind of pulled me into the hunting scene over there. A good friend of mine, Mike, he taught me how to reload while I was there. So I started reloading for everything I shot, including shot shells, and really got deep into that and really enjoyed that. And then I got off the plane and landed here, and a bunch of friends of mine, close friends that I was stationed with before, were already here in Nevada when I got stationed here. So, I mean, within hours of hitting the scene here, I said, oh my God, I can't believe this. 'Cause in Germany, it's a big process to buy a gun. So my first guns that I bought, it was a lot of approval from this guy and that guy and months. Basically, I'd honestly say it's a more cumbersome system than our Class 3 stuff here was to go buy. If you wanted a Ruger 1022 there, you're going through that same process. So it wasn't just walk into a store and go buy a gun there. So I was super spoiled when I got here and got really excited, and I went on a buying spree when I got here. I couldn't believe you can go on Craigslist and find guns and going to people's houses and started meeting like-minded folks and stayed with it here. Did a lot of shooting. First couple of years I was here. Traveled a lot with the military. We deployed 6 or 7 times while I was here. Within 3 months of me getting here, so I was gone more than I was here for the first 7 or 8 years that I lived here. Going on 11 years here now. Somewhere in 2009, a group of us got together and decided that it would be a great idea to get an FFL because all we did was all of us take our paychecks and drain them into guns. And there was a myth out there that if you get this FFL, all of a sudden guns are half price, and we learned really quick that it's absolutely untrue. Horrible margins in guns, but we did it more of a club thing, and then a whole bunch of different stuff. When we first started, it was basically when I got off of work on base, I'd come here and we had it more of a hangout. It wasn't really a store. It had no carpet. The walls weren't painted. No showcases. No anything. We'd buy and sell a few things here and there in bulk. A lot of it was reloading supplies, stuff the other shops weren't doing. And we'd go to the government auction and buy tons of ammo cans and drive to California and pick up these ammo cans and come up here and sell them in the parking lot at gun shows and a lot of embarrassing stuff now looking back at it. But it was all cool, really cool experience. A friend of mine was doing something similar, but without the firearms part. He was doing some accessories and stuff like that around town. And it was kind of when construction started dwindling here, and he had a little downturn and didn't have any work anymore at the construction site. So he said, "Hey, there's people banging at this door all day. Why don't we, open it up as a store?" So he put a bunch of stuff in there, and I put a bunch of stuff in there, and it kind of grew from there. I don't know when you first started coming, but I know we started off with a 1,200 square foot retail space and pretty empty. A lot of my own guns got sold, so I could have something in the cases. It's funny business to get in. A lot of the big distributors, and hopefully none of them will cut me off now. I think I do a good enough business with them. But early on, I'm not going to lie, I'd call all my friends that I could, and hey, everybody bring your guns to the store so I could take these pictures. Distributors wouldn't sign you up unless you had photos of this, perfect gun shop with tons of guns in it and all this. And well, if none of them will do it, I can't get a chance to buy any guns from anybody. So we had to kind of fake some photos and take some creative pictures of our stores and all that stuff, and got it all done. And over time, built up the store really slow. It took on. I can't even explain how awesome it was. I got really lucky with employees. As we added employees, like I said, it started with me, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and we're going at it for, this will be this month in 3 or 4 days is our 7th year open to the public. So it's grown immensely. We're at 24 employees on this side of things now. We stay really busy, as you've been in the store. We stay really popular. All based on customer service, really. That's one of the main reasons when we decided to actually turn it into a business. I think that was the biggest thing for me was what are these other places not doing? And one of the problems, and there's a ton of great gun stores in town. There's hundreds of FFLs in town. There's 3 or 4 stores our size, and I'm friends with a few of the owners of some of the other ones. And there's some great stores in town, but for a long time it wasn't the case. There was a huge lack of customer service. A lot of price gouging going on and stuff like that. So our deal has always been, let's be fair and do it in volume. And then I got out of the military a few years back at my 15-year mark. It was kind of a decision I had to make. I had some medical issues, and it was either cross-train into a career field that I didn't want to do. I mean, I was used to being on the front lines. We were over in Iraq and Afghanistan running convoys all the time, and basically I would have been, and not to knock anybody that works in Air Force services, but I would have been handing out towels at the gym or working in the chow hall or something like that. So that definitely wasn't me and doesn't fit my personality. So I made a really hard decision at 15 years to jump ship, and I didn't want to cross-train. So ended up getting out, and then that's when the business really started to take off because I had my full attention and all my focus, and working a lot of hours and built it up. Somewhere around, I guess, the second Obama panic, we started running into supply chain issues. As we grew into a little more wholesale work. we were getting to be the big boys in town and having the buying power to fill the store and get really good deals on stuff that I couldn't get before. And one of the markets I found and kind of went after really hard, and I still do today, is the smaller dealers get pushed aside in this industry really easy by whether it's buy-ins or this or that. Some company, well, you can't buy any of our stuff unless you buy $100,000 worth of our stuff. And so we found this niche where, hey, I'm already bought in with these guys. I'm buying a ton of stuff from them. I can pass this on to these other dealers at a small markup and see what we can do there. So we started doing a lot of wholesale. As we were doing that, as things tightened up around that second election, we had a lot of supply chain issues. No matter how big I thought I was probably nobody to them. And a lot of manufacturers went straight to retail during those times and kind of drained all of us dealers. So even though I could have sold $1 million a day worth of guns, if you can't get them, you can't sell them. So I made a bold attempt at, hey, we should do this ourselves. Why can't we make these? We can figure this out. So working with one of my previous vendors, came over and hired them, bought a building, only about 10 minutes down the road. You get to come one of these days when you want to make the trek around town, but we bought about a 9,000 square foot building about 10 minutes away. Bought a couple, actually, we started with two CNC machines, 2 CNC mills. No idea what we were doing in the big scheme of things. Looking back at it now, I laugh. Made a lot of bad decisions. Like any venture, I think, takes a very strange path, but easy to look back on it now and Monday morning quarterback it. But I think we did pretty good, and it's been about, I think this summer is going to be 3 years with the manufacturing shop open, and we have 4, 5, 6 times the machines down there. We're running everything right now 24/7 to try to keep up, and we're still booked out for the year pretty much. So we're working with the power company right now to try to get a power upgrade so we can throw 6 or 7 more machines in and 4 or 5 more employees and keep that place smoking. But it's all grown. It's grown huge. The store's grown huge. A lot to it, but we're really happy with where we're at and where we're growing. And I think just now is where we're putting some effort. We've done it really quietly, I think. We stayed under the radar for the most part, and it was nice. I enjoy being under the radar with a lot of this stuff. I don't like to get in all the fights that I see out there and the back and forth. So we've flown really low under the radar, basically focusing on smaller dealers and servicing them as far as our wholesale business and manufacturing business goes. Same thing. I opened up some programs that I didn't have afforded to me when I started, and I said, man, if I had this when I started, I could have gotten a lot bigger, a lot faster. And companies wanted $500 and $1,000 to set up a variance to make receivers for them with their name on it. And I decided, hey, that wasn't the way to go. You don't need to have somebody buy 500 of these things to do it. We figured out how to do it pretty fast and switch back and forth between brands that we do. So we started doing variances with no setup fees for other dealers, and we just did minimums of 10 part orders. So we've grown that quite a bit. We have several hundred variance customers that we do work for, and then over the past year or so, we've gotten in with some bigger companies that we're doing some contract work for them now. So just now is when we're kind of, it's being exposed that we're a lot bigger than people thought we were, and we were stayed under the radar for quite a while, but now we're going to hit it pretty hard now with a lot of new products in the pipeline coming out this year. So
awesome. I was talking to Ivan, going back and forth because the 2 people that aren't eligible to win this 9mm AR are Reed and myself. So I was talking to him about getting one, and it's amazing how busy you guys are. And even your own product in the shop, sometimes you don't see it in the case because it's going out the door so quick. And he's telling me, he just told me the other day, he's like 6 to 8 weeks on the upper, and maybe if we're lucky, we'll get you the lower in a month or 2. And so I'm like, all right, I understand.
It's been ridiculous. We commit to dealers. We don't ever take any prepayments from any of our customers, retail or wholesale, and I do honor their purchase orders. So if guys are sticking with me through the slow times and they're keeping purchase orders rolling and they're out pushing the product that we're making, I feel like I'm obligated to make sure that when there is good times like we're in right now this year, since November, that they're taken care of through that as well. So yeah, my retail sales guys absolutely hate me because if I walk by and I see something sitting still and it's not either coming out of a box and going into a customer's hands, I'm online trying to sell it. I'm running around, I'm filling old orders, and yeah, I don't let anything sit. So they've just finally twisted my arm to say, do you know how embarrassing it is when people come in the store and we're out of stock of all of our own stuff? And I said, yeah, you're right. So like I said, we're making some efforts to crank up down at the shop, and we're putting out, honestly, we're putting out over, I won't say a number, thousands and thousands of parts a week out of that shop. So it's not like we're just not making the stuff. We're definitely cranking everything out, and stuff's getting out as fast as it can. But that is one big push we're doing, is try to get a lot more of our stuff out in the retail store.
Nice. If you were to look to the future of New Frontier Armory in 5 years, where would you want to be? What would you want to see come out of your company?
Honestly, I think we're going to stay on track with what we're doing. We've gone back and forth a few times with complete rifles, and it's not a matter of can we do it or not, or can we do it cheap enough or nice enough. It's a matter of we don't think that's where the market is or should be. I'd rather help educate people on how to build their own gun from the ground up, or with at least sections of our stuff. You want to get a complete lower from us or a complete upper and do this or that, but I don't like putting people into something out of the box it's not them. You know how big this industry is and how many parts are available. I mean, grips, there's 50 different brands of grips and colors and styles, and there's so many options now. Everybody's kind of beating this horse to the point where now we're just making stuff up to sell for AR-15s. I like it all. I love that the options are there. I don't buy into a lot of it on my personal guns. I run pretty stock guns, but there's so many gadgets and gizmos and oh, this is better and that. We're changing stuff now just to change stuff to make something new. And we're going to stick with components. I'm going to continue to grow the wholesale and the manufacturing side of our business rapidly, especially the manufacturing portion. I think that's where the future is definitely at for our company. The retail store, honestly, is not my favorite portion of the business anymore. I have a strange loyalty to it because I really, really love our local customers. We have regulars that come in, and my guys that have been around at least for a little bit, they know people's names and they might not come in the store for a year or two, and they still remember their names, and I love seeing that, and I love taking care of our local customers, and I love my employees, so that's a big part of it too. But the retail store anymore, I think if there was no regulation that a firearm had to transfer through an FFL, I honestly think 99% of us would just wither up and go away. With what you can do online now between Amazon and different warehousing shops online, you can have something here the next day for, there's tons of guns out there that are honestly, there's no margin in it for me. Customers can go out and buy it cheaper than my dealer price a lot of times from some of these warehousing stores, which I'm mad about it. It is what it is. We ship a lot of guns out of state too, so I never get mad about that. But retail stores in general, I think, not even just in the firearms industry, are kind of dying away slowly. You see Walmart closing a bunch of stores even here in town where we have a hustle and bustle town. There's reasons for that. It's too convenient to leave the house anymore to go shopping. You're getting your groceries delivered, you're getting your Amazon the next morning or whatever. So I don't think it'll die off or anything. We're doing really well, and we're staying very busy. But I think it's grown to where I need it to be, and that's about all it's going to get. We're up to we started with about 1,200 square feet or so, and we're up to 6,000 square feet of retail space now. So we're pretty maxed out there, and I think that'll taper off, and our focus is going to shift really hard to the manufacturing side of things over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I'll be up to visit you guys in a week. My favorite lowers went on sale this last weekend, and I have a lower problem. I tend to just buy.
He has a lower addiction.
So I'll be up there to see Ivan and pick up some of the lowers I've got coming in and talk. But thanks for giving us an overview of the company and your background in New Frontier. I'm going to turn it over to Reed now as we talk about the 9mm carbine. It seems to be one of the hot items in the market. We saw you guys at SHOT Show, and then as you're seeing the news releases out, you're seeing other people come to the market with 9mm carbines. And so we're excited about the one we're giving away our listeners, right, Reed?
Absolutely. You know, I think that really when it comes down to it, to date, the pistol caliber carbine has been more of a novelty than it has been kind of a mainstay of any particular line in anybody's, I don't know, inventory or stable of offerings. So I think the thing that interests me most at the outset is this something that you guys picked up on, or did you just decide, hey, 9mm is where we want to be this year, or was there some kind of leading indicator that you guys caught wind of that gave you the confidence to, you know, come in behind this and really, you know, put down some effort and resources into putting this aspect of your line together?
So one of the reasons we've messed around with the platform for quite a while, using different mag blocks and adapters and different stuff. We definitely weren't the first ones to come out with the 9mm with Glock magazines. There was 3 out when we released ours, or two on the market for sale, and 1 on its way with us. What we tried to do, and it's kind of been a trend, and we did it with the polymer lowers and that type of stuff. I like to see things out there affordable, and I honestly, like you said, the 9mm thing was a really cool idea, I think, for a lot of reasons. Ammo prices, availability of the magazines, different reasons, where I think they make cool little guns, especially the 9, but any of the pistol calibers. I think there was an entry fee that was way too high to have one as a toy, or just for most people just to buy one. A lot of guys, if you hear, I know you guys are all in the same circles that I'm in on Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff, and you'll hear a lot of these guys and they talk and they name 3 or 4 of the top tier brands, and there's nothing wrong with those. Actually, I own a ton of other brand guns. I have more ARs that aren't mine than are mine, and not for one reason or another. And nothing wrong with them. It's just I think a big part of it was, people see that side of the industry because that's what people talk about online. The majority, and I can tell you as from a sales standpoint, the majority of shooters and gun enthusiasts aren't the guys out buying $2,000 ARs and running the best of whatever. It's the guys buying stuff at Walmart. It's the guys buying stuff online cheap. And there's that segment of the market is so much bigger. You don't hear from those guys because they don't bother with it like we do. They're not into it the amount that some of us are, where we're talking about it all night on forums and on Facebook and on here and in this group and that group. They just like to go out and shoot on the weekend, once a month, once every couple months, whatever, and they put their guns away and they go on with their life. They don't accessorize them to the T. They don't worry about all this stuff. So that market was missing out on that 9mm carbine. There was a few other ones out there, some newer stuff, and I didn't like any of the options that were out there. We messed around a little bit with Colt mags, and the more and more we talked about it, the more we did some testing, we decided Glock mags was the way to go. A lot more out there, a lot more available, and the tipping point was right around when we were going back and forth on the 2 magwells. When we were going to make the decision was when Magpul released that they were going to make a Glock mag that was half the price, and I said, well, that's right in line with what we're doing. So we sat there and looked at it, and like I said, it was a cost-prohibitive thing to even to build your own was very expensive. Mag blocks at one point, a couple of companies might still be at $200 and $225 for an insert that goes in your magazine, and now we're able to put out a lower for less than that. So I think that's really cool. So that was our main goal with that. I said, hey, we can put a dent in this. And like I talked to you earlier before the show. Part of production that people don't understand, they get puzzled. I answer questions a lot in the store too. How could a 410 shot shell cost 4 times as much as a 12 gauge shot shell that's 3 times the lead, 3 times the powder, 3 times the hull? It's easy. They're making millions and millions and millions of those 12 gauge shells a minute. So all the material, everything that goes into that is bought a lot cheaper, and the machines are running a lot faster, more efficient than the 410 we don't sell that much of. And it was my same theory with this was, hey, if I can make these lowers affordable and give everybody the same quality and the same little features that some of the more expensive ones have, and just make it a little bit cheaper, not make the product cheaper, but offer it for less of a price, then I think we can sell a ton of more 9mm barrels, which will drive the cost down on 9mm barrels, a ton of more 9mm bolts, a ton more of all these parts that we use in this gun. So we set out, and it was like everything else I've done since the day we opened this business. It was go broke or go home. And we did. We put it all on the line. We ordered thousands of barrels, thousands of bolts, thousands of everything, figuring, hey, there has to be a way to get the cost on this stuff. A 9mm barrel at 8 inches shouldn't cost $250, $300. That's ridiculous. There's no way, So we got the price driven down on. We were the first ones, and if you noticed, I'm not taking credit for the whole trend. It's going that way because there's a lot of good marketing from some other companies out there as well, and there's a big push. And like anything in this industry, when your neighbor gets it or your buddy gets one, and you start shooting it and you like it, guess who gets one next? And it's a lot of it is that there's more people having them now, and the word's getting out there. But I will take credit for a little chunk of it and say that I think some of it was us driving the price down, the price of entry to that platform, and driving some of those parts down, the barrels, bolt carriers, stuff like that, where, hey, wait a minute, now I can build this for the same price I can build a decent AR for. I might have to look at this now, So that was the intention when we started with that platform, and I'm happy to say that it definitely worked. We're outselling our standard AR-15 lowers right now with the 9s. Tons of purchase orders in for the 45 that'll be out really soon, the large frame Glock lower. So it definitely worked.
Well, let me ask you this. So in terms of kind of like the status quo of the rifle caliber AR-15 lines, 223 is king. Do you think that the 9mm and whatever other pistol calibers kind of come up in terms of popularity and are capable of being drivers of more sales, are you going to have like two parallel lines? I mean, are you going to have like the big companies are going to have a line of rifle caliber ARs and then the pistol calibers? I mean, are you seeing this as a fad, or is it something that's going to entrench itself into just the way that you do business, where you will always, from here on out, have 9mm lowers and the tools for the components for 9mm uppers, because they're just going to have their own supported, refreshing, renewing customer base?
That's a good question, and we discussed a lot of this stuff as we grow our manufacturing shop. We have to discuss this stuff because we're not looking days out; we're looking months and years out when we're buying equipment and changing things, and that's one of the things we've talked about quite a bit. I don't think it's a fad per se. I think you'll see a big boom in it right now. You're obviously seeing this huge spike, and right now it's those guys I described, like me and you guys, that are really involved in the industry and talking online, and you'll see that peak first. And as that peaks, the guys that aren't into it like we are now seeing them show up at the range, and they're getting that second wind of this stuff going. So that I'm thinking that'll be sometime spring to summer next year. You'll see that second wave of guys come through, and you'll see, I can tell you'll definitely see them in a lot of the big box stores under other brand names. They're going to be out there. They're all over the place. You'll see everybody pop up with it and ride the wave through. And then I don't think it'll go away. Like I said, as the price comes down on them, I think they'll stay a staple.
We mentioned before that I've had an opportunity to handle a pistol caliber AR, and while I favored the 357 SIG in that choice, which in and of itself is not an inexpensive route, I would say that in terms of being able to go out and I think have an opportunity to get on the range and put trigger time into a rifle that's going to, allow you to have an interactive training session, I gotta think that the 9mm lends itself to something more substantial than, say, an AR converted to shoot 22, and still give you some kind of price-effective points, allowing you to train in higher volumes of fire for less cost than the 223. Do you think that that's a viable choice in that regard, or do you think there's something that distinguishes I mean, yeah, obviously it's not the same magazine. There's some differences there. But are you going to get some of the same training features with a little less cost if you go to the pistol caliber?
I think so, and a lot of guys that are, there's a lot of guys not only for the training itself, but there's a lot of guys switching to 9 and 45 pistol caliber carbines for defense type guns. There's actually a lot of law enforcement agencies messing around with them right now, and some of them have adopted already. It's suitable for that. You got to remember how popular the MP5 is, say, all over the world for that type of application. So you brought up a good point with the training. I think it is. I think I don't know how to explain it. I have 22 conversions. I think going out and shooting that, it feels almost more like a toy, like you're not really shooting an AR anymore, where the 9 doesn't. A little bit cost savings on the ammo for sure from the 223, and then one of the points while we're on the training aspect is I'm seeing a lot of local guys that love it. When they're out training, they're carrying a ton of mags on their belt, and they're shooting their Glock 17 or their Glock 19, and they're running the same mags in their carbine and not carrying a bunch of different stuff and a bunch of different ammo to the range and whatever. So I think there's some pluses in there for sure.
Well, and I guess it's hard to imagine not having the ability to use the same mags you would in your rifle caliber AR might be a little bit of a hindrance, but still, trigger time is trigger time. I don't think it matters what you're shooting.
That's right.
So, in terms of what you have brought to, essentially the 9 and a carbine's been around for decades now. But what you guys think you brought to the carbine, the pistol caliber carbine, what do you think is kind of like the big add? And yes, I think you're right when you talk about getting purchasers to the market. I mean, you're not going to attract the average driver if all you can buy is a Lexus. He's going to figure out how to ride the bus or walk. But when you're talking about the other things that make your carbine unique, what are you adding to it that you guys are really proud of at this point?
A lot of it was compatibility things for sure, little features that we put in to make a lot of parts that weren't working on some of them work for sure. One of the major ones is we distribute for a company named XStar. I know JD's seen our XStar pistols in here, the EXP 556, and you guys saw the EXP 9 at SHOT Show that should be out really soon. Those guys do some really groundbreaking stuff. They have tons of stuff in the works. Really, really smart guys over there. And as they were messing around building this EXP 9 polymer pistol, they've came up with a really, really great last round bolt hole open design. And I kind of I stayed on their backs for a ton of time, and please let me use it, please let me use it, please let me use it, please let me use it. And they finally agreed once it was patented that we had a licensing agreement with them to use the last round bolt hole open system of theirs. It's in our upper receiver, which some people don't like because they want to use all different types of uppers, but we do offer a side charging upper, non-reciprocating side charger, and a standard AR upper with it in it. So we tested a bunch of systems. We tested a bunch of stuff that was already on the market when we started. We tried little designs here and there, and we weren't happy with any of them. I messed around the year before we put ours out. I kind of went to SHOT Show, and I visited 2 booths, and hey, does your bolt hold open work any better than people say online? Not really. Like, they admitted it. There's still a company that on their website says that it doesn't work. Like, hey, this thing isn't really great. We're not happy with it. But if you mess around with it and bend some stuff here and there, it might work, maybe, sometimes. And I'm like, that's not good enough. So I was, you mentioned Lone Wolf earlier. Lone Wolf's had their 9mm Glock lower out the longest. They've done really, really well with it, and it's just a basic piece, and we kind of built on that. But, that was the route they took was, hey, this thing doesn't, the bolt hold open doesn't work in the lower, so just get rid of it. Why? That was a decision we had to make, was either we're just going to either do this thing without one totally, because I'm not putting one in there that doesn't work. I'm not dealing with it. I'm not dealing with the customer service issues. It's not worth, can I say half-ass? You can beat me out. I don't know. It's not worth doing it that way. So we did it the right way. We worked with X-Star real closely. Got this system developed that they can use in their X-Star pistols, and we can use in our aluminum parts, and it's worked out really, really well. We're super happy with it. Everybody that's used it is super, super happy with it. Very, very reliable because it's so simple, and it just works every time.
See, I think that's pretty amazing. So, aside from that, is this foray into the 9mm realm something that comes with any other thoughts for improvement, or has all of that ground been plowed before, and really it's about better manufacturing, better customer service? Where do you think your energies are on this?
I think that's what a lot of it is. The platform has been around for decades, with cold standard mags, or if you go digging around online, there's tons and tons of different conversions people have done over the years to use all types of surplus military style mags. It's all been done, and like we talked about a little bit earlier with the AR stuff, there's very, very little coming out. There's stuff that's coming out that has benefits for sure, but there's very, very little coming out that's new and groundbreaking. And there's a reason. It's been around for decades and decades and decades, and we've played with this thing over and over. And when something works, just leave it alone. I say leave it alone and let it work. So what we focused on was, okay, we want all these features in this lower. We want it to be just as good as the ones that are out there for $300, $400. I see some for $500. Little stuff, our threaded bolt catch pin, threaded pin for the takedown detent spring, just little odds and ends stuff that we can do differently, and at the same time updating how this stuff is made and how it's manufactured. I think a lot of guys that have been in the game a long time, everybody copied Colt at one point and Armalite, and they kind of did things. Hey, I saw a photo of their factory and they used this machine to do this. And people laughed at me when we started. I said, hey, we can buy a broach machine and start broaching our own AR magwells. And everybody laughed at me like, you don't know anything about broaching. And I'm like, it can't, it's like anything else. It's learnable. There's somebody else doing it. That means it's possible. There might be a reason. And all of the broach manufacturers I talked to tried to talk me into 3 12-foot tools and all this crazy stuff to broach this magwell. We figured out on our own how to do it, a lot quicker, a lot cheaper, a lot smaller equipment and smaller tools. The technology has changed so far. I want to reach through the screen so many times, and sometimes, not you guys personally, but sometimes on your podcast, sometimes when I'm reading on different forums, I want to just reach through the screen and choke the next guy that says mil spec, mil spec, mil spec. Mil spec is so outdated when it comes to this platform. It's ridiculous. Technology and coatings and manufacturing, everything in materials has come so far, but people are like stuck to that like glue, and they won't get off of it. And I'm like, stop for a minute. We can do this so much better, and at the same time faster, which makes it cheaper, and we can offer you guys products that are a lot less in cost than what's out there because we're doing things differently. We're really, like I said, we were new to the manufacturing world, which was a curse at the beginning. But now we come at it with very clear eyes. We work with a lot of 40, 50-year machinists here in town that we talk to and consult with, and companies that we bring in to come check with us and consult with, or guys we buy tooling from. And talking to those guys, they get a kick out of it because they're like, you guys are you're like cowboys doing this. Like there's no rules. You're just like figuring stuff out, and you're like, why can't you do it this way? Where they're like, they admit to it that they're stuck doing it a way that they learned 40 or 50 years ago, and not that they didn't think there's another way. They just, who cares? Let's just do it this way because we know it works. And we're here like, hey, wait a minute. You can make 10 an hour. We want to figure out how to make 50 an hour. Let's really look at this. And we're coming up with ideas that are actually working, and it's scaring the heck out of them. But and I think that's what we bring to the table. I think we brought value to the table, throwing in some of the features on these lowers, on these billet lowers that are that only were coming in a lot of the high-end stuff, and doing it for a price that's very affordable. We lose a good chunk of the market share because of our prices, and I'm okay with that because, like I said, the other share is quite a bit bigger, and I'd rather see my guns out being shot by the average guy, and we hear it all the time, like, well, I want to be able to take, guys that are never going anywhere past their local neighborhood range, or start talking about desert conditions and wartime and this and that. And I'm like, well, you're not in the military. You're not taking this to war. We didn't build this for you to take to Iraq to defend the country. This is something to take to the range and go shoot, or to throw in your house or whatever. And I like that. I like that group of people, and they're out actually putting real rounds through these guns, and they're out shooting them, and they're having a good time with them, and they're affordable. They're able to buy this stuff and get out there and have fun. So I'm okay with the little portion of the market we lose. I think there's far superior products at double the price, triple the price, and it's not because we can't do that. We can clearly do that, but I don't want to be in that market. We had to make some compromises and hit the market that I think we needed to be in and that we're happy in. So there's some guys that just won't touch. Oh man, a billet lower for $120. Mine is what XYZ brand, and it costs $480 stripped. Good. I mean, if that makes you happy, then go for it. And there's nothing wrong with it. And I own some of them personally. And there's a place for them on my fancy wall when I'm impressing people. But to just get out and shoot, put some rounds down, it doesn't need to be that bad, and it doesn't need to hurt the wallet that bad. And guys with big families, or guys buying guns for their kids, these 9mm carbines make an awesome gun to get a kid started in the AR world. Keep it nice and light and low recoil, and it's just a all-around cool platform. So I think that's the biggest thing, is the value we bring to the industry, without cutting too many of the features and the whiz-bang stuff that goes with it.
Well, let's talk about what you guys are putting into it that's actually you guys. So you guys are doing your uppers and lowers, and you're licensing the last bolt hold open. So is that something you're manufacturing and installing into the upper receivers you guys are doing?
Parts of it. There's a lot of stuff we can't talk about because we have a lot of non-disclosure agreements with other companies, but we focus mostly on mill work, so not a lot of barrels or bolts. That stuff gets outsourced for now. It's definitely something we're looking at, and something we'll grow into over time. But right now we're kind of staying in our lane, and we're focusing on what we're really good at. We're making our milled parts for a ton of other companies, and a lot of those companies are turning around and making barrels and bolts and things like that to our specifications.
And so in terms of what you have available to your customers, to take one of your stripped receiver sets from concept to finished rifle, are you a final destination for all those choices? They can get onto your website, fill their cart, and have the entirety of the rifle purchased in one sitting?
Absolutely. Like I said, we're seeing some growing pains right now. I knew this would be popular, and I knew we'd put a pretty big dent in the market and stay busy with it. But even I underestimated what it really turned out to be. So, like I said, trying to keep everybody happy. A lot of retail customers get upset because they come to my website. My website was more for, even from the beginning, was more for information for the retail customer. If I have dealers waiting in line for this stuff, it's not because I like the dealer more. I'm making less money when I sell it to the dealer, so it's not because of greed or anything else. I think that the dealers, if they're going to put shelf space towards my product, and they're going to put the time and effort into pushing the product as well, I think I owe it to them to make sure that when they want their shelves filled, that their shelves are filled before I go straight to retail. It's a change in this industry that's it's liked by some, and some people look at it and frown at it, but we're in a really weird position where we're a retail store, a wholesaling outfit, and a manufacturing shop all in one. So we're in a really weird position where we got to try to balance all that out. But more and more you're seeing manufacturers going direct to retail, and we're trying to do it in a way where it balances out, where we don't make our dealers really unhappy, and I'd rather see the dealers making the sales on this stuff than us on the web. I'd rather see people go to their local dealers and shake them down and say, hey, I want this stuff. And I know JD's dealt with the girls in the office. I know I have awesome employees. I can't brag enough about them. That's one thing I'm super proud of. The girls in my office are amazing. We definitely couldn't be anywhere near where we are without them. If a dealer called tomorrow morning at the minute after they open at 10:01 and talked to them on the phone and said, hey, I'm a new dealer, I had a customer asking about this product, they're signed up within 3 minutes. They have a price list. We make it super easy for these guys, the small dealers, to come and buy ones and twos parts off us. We go way out of our way for those guys because we started there, and I think we have some sympathy for that, and we knew how hard it was when Nobody wanted to return our calls or emails, so we really focus on that. But yes, the short answer is yes. We have all the components needed to build the rifles. Just like I say, between supply chain issues right now, while things are really busy, right now it happens to be lower parts kits, and it's definitely not us. It's tons and tons of companies are out of lower parts kits or already starting to feel some of this squeeze. The industry's been such a roller coaster for the last 3 or 4 years, with really, really low lows, and the highs are here. They're extremely high that nobody can predict and keep up with. So I think all the way down the chain, from people that are casting parts to people that are making springs to whatever, everybody's kind of in limbo, saying, I don't know what to do. When I make 1 million parts, the industry tanks, and I'm sitting on them all, and then everything sells for cheap. And you're seeing that now over the last couple of years with forged lowers. You've seen forged lowers at a price that they haven't been at in a decade, which is great, I think. Everybody says, oh, they're flooding the market. Flood the market. I'll sell them parts all day long. They're going to have to build them at some point.
Right.
Like JD with his 150 lower receivers that he has. At some point, he's coming up to buy upper parts, man. I know it. So, I think that stuff's great, and it levels out the market a little bit. But yeah, that's the hardest part right now, is keeping everything in stock equally. And that's one of the reasons we always shied away from building rifles and a lot of complete components. One, I'd rather have people be able to piece together exactly what they want and spend the money once. It's like a motorcycle or a car or anything else. You spend the money on something, and then the first thing you do is take it home, rip it to pieces, and put a bunch of parts in the corner of your house for how long, and put all these new stuff on it. So if you could just spend the money from the ground up, you can build that $2,000 rifle for $800, $900, $1,200 from the get-go, and leave with what you're happy with. It's just a matter of getting all the chains to line up the right way and have all the parts all at once is a little tough, but I think that's part of the fun, is going out and picking pieces here and there and getting it done. But yeah, we do offer all the parts to build a complete rifle.
Well, even from that perspective, if you're trying to sell whole rifles, then you only get as many rifles up into inventory as you can actually complete. Whereas if you're selling parts, even if you're out of lower parts kits, if some guy's been stockpiling them for the last 4 years, he can buy the rest of your components all day long and fill out his wish list. Or they can find another retailer that has the one thing that you don't have, but they do have, which still means the guy walks home with a complete build. I don't see a problem with that at all.
Absolutely.
So tell me, in terms of when it comes down to the idea of New Frontier Armory riding this wave, do you see an unlimited future on the manufacturing side? And you'll have to forgive me while I sneeze here.
Go for it.
All right, so
I do. I think this industry isn't going anywhere. We're our own worst enemies as customers, and I'll talk as a shooter or a customer. We're our own worst enemies when it comes time of political crisis and turmoil. Everybody runs out and does crazy stuff that they wouldn't have done last week, and I urge people, especially like my dealers, I urge them, like, please keep your stock up where it's supposed to be now. Don't wait. Don't let me not hear from you for a year and then come at me crazy. I think as much as we like to go in a panic over they're going to ban this, they're going to do this, I'm proud that we're in a country that I don't think people would let that happen. I'm not a doom and gloom type of guy. I don't ever see my guns sitting in a pile with a bulldozer going over them or lit on fire and melted down, or I don't see it happening. We're very creative. Look at what we've done for states like New York and California, where every time they put in a law, it opens up a new product line. Hey, we can make this funny looking stock now, or we can do this, bullet buttons, mag catches, different stuff. What's the way around these laws? Well, we work with another manufacturer in New York, and we help them out with some products, and he's made a new deal for a fixed magazine AR up there to get around some of the stuff. There's that stuff all brings opportunity, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think at some point, and it would be really welcomed by me and other manufacturers, I think at some point the military is going to have to switch to something with a little newer technology, a little lighter, different materials, stuff like that. And I don't think the AR-15 will be our military weapon of choice forever. And when that happens, I think that's going to open up a whole new industry, just like we have for the AR-15 stuff. So
Right.
I think it's a matter of kind of like what we did with this pistol caliber stuff, is stay really flexible, keep our ear to the ground, and kind of try to foresee as best we can where everything's going, and kind of snake with it. But
Well, it's well, we're coming up on 80 years since the war ended, World War II. I have a Garand in my closet because the rifle is just amazing. I can't imagine that we're not going to find ourselves at a point in time where the AR-15 isn't the military standard, that someone 80 years later is still going to buy one because it represents
Absolutely.
what Granddad carried, and whatever the next conflict is going to be, or whatever the next iteration. So I mean, I don't see. I agree with you completely. But I think here's something that's kind of a finer point on the whole issue. When you talk about New Frontier Armory and the growing pains the company has gone through, there is that point at which you can either go big or go home, and it's all right. Well, let's double our manufacturing capacity, or let's invest enormous resources and maybe drop off this other component that isn't really as big a part of what we do today, even though it might have been the way that we started. Do you think that there is a point at which you guys will say, okay, the company is as big as I want it to be. This is as much as I'm ever going to do. We're going to just freeze it here, even if there is growth and opportunity? Or do you see you guys kind of at that position where, if they're going to keep throwing a brass ring at us, we're going to keep grabbing for it?
Honestly, Reed, while I'm at the wheel, I'm not the guy to lay down and sleep on the job. There's plenty of times where I can take off, and I do. I go on vacations, I go on a lot of hunting trips, whatever. But I honestly work 90-hour weeks. I work 7 days a week. Yesterday I was in here from 6 in the morning till 9 or 10 at night. I really, really love what I do, and it's gotten to the point now where I may have lost a little bit of interest in some of the guns and stuff like that. And the game of doing this and creating some new stuff and trying to find these little voids to fill and little niches where we can make some waves. That's become like a really fun game for me, and I'm trucking along at it. And I don't. It would take a lot to get me to just stop and say, okay, this is enough. I know I have to do that in parts of my business, and like we discussed with the retail store, there's a limit that thing can get to. I'm fighting a Bass Pro Shop and a Sportsman's Warehouse in town in the same valley, so there's not. I'm never going to be those guys, and I don't want to be those guys. They can keep that part of it. But as far as the manufacturing and the wholesale side goes, I don't see me slowing down. I think we're gonna keep growing it. I'm that guy that keeps rolling the dice, and we fall on our face here and there, and I'll be the first to admit it. And I think if anybody that's ran successful businesses tells you otherwise, they're lying to your face. It hurts. There's times where you're wrong. There's times where you make really bad decisions. There's times where you make decisions that cost you a ton of money, and you think you'll never recover from it. But we just keep getting back up, getting on our feet, and kicking butt. And I think I don't see where will there be a day where I say like, hey, we're good enough, let's just keep making bread and butter. I don't see it. I think we'll keep rolling with the trends, keep trying to put out some new product, and keep up with the market, and truck along, keep adding stuff to our inventory.
Reed, when I went to visit David up there at New Frontier and to talk about the 9mm carbine, he's like, "Don't even ask my staff for me. Just shoot me a text because they won't let anybody get to me because he's a very busy man." So I appreciated the time he put in for the 9mm giveaway to discuss that. But yeah, I believe it. I believe he sleeps there and goes home very late. And putting in a lot of hard work there at New Frontier Armory.
Supposedly that's all going to change. I have a baby on the way next Wednesday, our first child, so it's going to definitely be an adjustment for me to put my most important focus somewhere else than my business, because this is what I've lived and eaten and sleeping for 7 years now, and my wife is super supportive of it. She makes jokes a lot, but she knows I'm doing it all for the right reasons, and it's going to be a big change for me, definitely, to step back a little bit and put some extra time in there. So it just means my sleep goes from 4 hours to 2 hours, I guess now. We'll see.
Oh no, that's all right. That's daddy there. That's daddy time. JD and I, we've been there. I tell you what, you need to get that little strap-on doohickey that lets you carry the baby on your chest.
Right.
And you can do all the paperwork at your desk you want. And spend
We've discussed that for sure. My wife's a real estate agent, so we're both pretty flexible with our schedules. So we've talked about how that baby's going to grow up here for sure, and she's going to run this company someday. So, but she'll start at the bottom in a little playpen here in my office. So.
Well, JD, do we want to go through some of the listener questions about the 9mm carbine and give David a chance to wrap this show up so we don't keep him up all night?
Yeah, I think we thoroughly answered the last round bolt hold open question that Mike K had. So, Mike, if you need more information on that, you can probably contact New Frontier Armory directly. Everybody seems to think this 9mm carbine is going to be theirs, David.
I've heard that. I have guys already customizing them, and I have guys coming in the store. We tried to spread the word the best we could. Bring some people over to your Facebook page and get some people signed up, some of the local customers especially. And I have guys coming in the store saying, hey, when I win that thing, will this handguard fit? Will this? Can I put this on there? What kind of optic do you think I should get? And I'm like, hey, whoa, slow down. Hey, actually, real quick, JD, while we're on the giveaway gun, I have to do a shameless shout out plug to one of my favorite dealers out in Lake Havasu, Arizona, RTT Firearms. They're really up and coming. I've been watching them grow for the past year, and they're really, really starting to break in up there, and they're doing some really, really great Cerakote work. And like I told you guys, they've donated a Cerakote job for the rifle. So the components are heading up their way tomorrow to Robert and Evelyn, and they're going to take care of that for you guys too.
I think I just saw on Facebook that they got a CNC machine today, right?
Yeah, Robert got one in. They've been in machining businesses before. They've done some motorsport parts and some different stuff, so they're not new to any of that. But yeah, they're getting into a little bit of that themselves as well. So you watch some big things coming from those guys soon.
Awesome.
I keep looking at trying to get one of those things, and when they start topping out at $100,000 and up, I think that's my lottery fantasy time there. I don't think I'll be able to go that route until then. So Tom G, he's one of our constant contributors. We're thinking that we might have to get him a restraining order against him. I think Tom probably communicates with us at least every 5 minutes. I don't know how the man can do the amazing things he does because he's always talking to us. But he says, do you guys have plans to come out with a 357 SIG version?
So he needs to spend some of that time reading the product descriptions on the website. Yeah. So right now the C9 lower, obviously 9. You have your Glock small frame magazines and your Glock large frame magazines. So we'll have them both covered. The 357 SIG will fall under the Glock small frame, which is already out. So we called it the C9, that 9mm, but it'll be 9mm. You can put 40 magazines in it, and you can put 357 SIG magazines in it. So it's already there. The problem is you want barrels. So yes. It kind of goes back to I think we were off the air when we spoke about it, but the issue with that is just production. Right now, we're running 2 or 3 different lines of barrels for 9mm. We have 40 barrels running right now, and we'll be out really soon as well as 40 bolts. And then we're going to work pretty hard on the 45 stuff. The 357 SIG, it's not because we don't want to do it. It's just the cost of doing them right now and slowing down the other stuff that has so much momentum and so many more people want is a little bit prohibitive. And that's why if you do a quick Google search for a 357 SIG AR-15 barrel and you find one, I'm thinking high $200s, low $300 range where it should be $100 part. And it's for that reason. And nobody's getting ripped off. It's just it's a specialty item. So will we? Yes, absolutely. I plan on having all of that stuff in. It's just the order that we bring it out in probably is not going to make the 357 SIG lovers super happy, because the guys shooting 9, 40, and 45 way outweigh his opinion, and they're going to come first. But we will have 357 SIG components out, I'd say by the end of the year, and 10 millimeter as well. 10 millimeter is actually will get done also before the 357 SIG. It's a real practical hunting round for a lot of the guys. We talked about a little bit doing some hog hunting, which is becoming super popular as the hogs take over many of our great states. So the 10 millimeter will come out after the standard calibers, and then 357 SIG. But yes, we will have them all.
Well, let me ask you a question, just operationally. As far as the bolt, the 40 cal bolt and the 9 millimeter bolt, is there much of a distinction other than having to adjust for the extraction?
The case head and the extractor, yeah. Other than that, it's not much at all.
Okay. So Jason B says he wants to know the details about what his new rifle will be, as far as barrel, bolt carrier group, handguard trigger, iron sights, optics. So we're using your uppers and lowers. The barrel.
JD and I sat down and kind of hashed something out. Even after last night's episode, I know you guys aren't the hugest fans of pistols, so he talked me right out of that right away. No AR pistol. That's honestly what's been most popular is pistol lower with 8-inch 9mm barrel. That's been by far the biggest seller everywhere. And you like to think everybody's out following the rules, but we're huge fans of the Shockwave brace. And probably for all the wrong reasons, and probably for the reason that we sell so many of them. I'm sure there's a lot of guys out there not following the rules and not putting that thing, strapping it to their arm or whatever, but I think that's what's going on, and that's clearly become the most popular stuff. But JD and I sat down, and we wanted to open this up to everybody. We don't want it to be, if you're in California, you can't win, or if you're in New York or this or that or whatever, Maryland, so we tried to do something that meets everybody's regulations, or that I can easily convert to meet everybody's regulations. So we settled on a pretty standard 16-inch 9mm carbine. Our upper and lower, our handguard. We'll do B5 is who I like for stocks and grip. So we'll have a B5 Systems upgraded Bravo stock and their grip, a little different grip angle on it. We really like them on these pistol cal carbines, and then. We're using our bolt carrier and all our small parts, and then, like I said, RTT will be doing the Cerakote job on it. So, have a pretty sweet gun. He hasn't committed to what he's doing yet, but I told him, I said, man, you're gonna be famous. You're on this, we're mentioning you on this podcast, so you got to make this thing count. So I'm sure Robert will stay out late at night for weeks on end to get this thing pretty cool paint on it.
In terms of the trigger, any trigger? Standard mil spec, standard Geisley, standard something you guys do. What are you doing in terms of the trigger?
Right now, it has a mil spec trigger, but we're working with one of our favorite trigger companies to get a small little elf to deliver us a trigger for it. So we'll see if we can get something rolling. We're selling a lot of their stuff. They've got really popular too, and we were actually ground floor with those guys, and we joke around with them all the time. We're saying, hey man, my walls are empty. You were begging me to buy these things when nobody knew who you were, and now my shelves just sit empty and I'm nobody. So we're messing with them a little bit. As long as we get their stuff back in stock in time, we're going to drop an elf trigger in it for you guys as well.
Okay. Well, I'm a big fan of their new safety selector there, so I had to buy an inordinate number of them so that I could replace some of my other ones.
Cool stuff.
So of course, I'm sure Jason threw iron sights in there because I'm always, harping on them. But Jason, we're going to assist with that side of it. So we're gonna see what we can find, and unless, of course, David, you want to pitch in on that front.
The sights I put on it won't be made of iron. I'll give it to you guys. We have this JD. Actually, you guys talked about it a little bit last night about our Wild West shooting adventures once you leave county limits, city limits. We joke around with a lot of the guys because they're like, well, I could just shoot it like this. Tons of guys buy these guns and they don't even realize that they can, adjust their flip up sights or their iron sights or whatever. And we joke around. We have this term. We go out and see these guys shoot, and we're like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, if I aim 4 feet high and 7 feet to the right, I can hit that thing over there on the left side." And so we have a term called minute of washing machine. And in Vegas, as long as the guys can hit a washing machine at 50 yards, that gun is dialed in to the T. They're out there junkyard desert shooting for the majority of us that go out there and do that. So, yeah, I'll give it to you guys ready for minimum washing machine, no problem.
That's all right. Well, I got to tell you, when I grew up in elementary school age days, I'd visit my relatives up in Pennsylvania. And my uncle would hand me a 22 and a brick of shells, and I would shoot the appliances in the dump. And there is nothing like shooting a washing machine with a firearm, because it just makes a really nice
Cool
circle
sounds.
as soon as all of that enamel comes flying off of wherever you hit it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a great reactive target. So, in terms of your standard carbine, everything that's aftermarket is traditionally going to work on it. You don't have a gas tube, and so there's no need for a gas block.
Mhm.
And
So
so in terms of your handguards, really you don't have anything that's going to impede the attachment, other than perhaps some handguard that indexes to a barrel nut, and all of a sudden you have to index your barrel nut where you would traditionally have indexed it with a gas tube.
Mhm.
But other than that, everything should work fine, right?
Yeah, and that shouldn't be an issue either. Just because it doesn't have a gas tube on it doesn't mean you can't shove one in the hole in the upper to align everything. The hole for the gas tube is still in our uppers, or any upper you use when you build off our lower. So you can still align the stuff that way. We worked with Battle Arms Development early on when we first started manufacturing, and we make sure we put our nubs in everything so we can get their selectors in, drop in without people grinding on stuff and drilling holes and all that. The only part that isn't interchangeable, I guess, is the magazine catch. That's a part that we make specific for the lower, and nobody's making aftermarket stuff yet, and there's really not a huge need for it. Other than that, that's the only thing that really can't be changed. Everything else is standard parts on it.
Tell me about the hammer. You don't have a need for a thinner hammer on your rifle, do you?
No, we changed the ramps on the bolts. Both bolts work in both bolts carry groups that we sell for the 9, and the same that'll be with the 40 and the 45. They'll work with Glock mag lowers or Colt mag lowers, and no need for a 9mm hammer. No.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you take the next one, JD.
Well, you commented on it on the last show, so we'll see if David comments on it, because Craig wrote in and said, what is the difference between New Frontier Armory's 9mm AR carbine versus Stag Arms 9mm AR carbine? Now, David, you can decline to comment if you wish.
Oh, we like those guys. I'm Connecticut born and bred, so I know a lot of the guys over there. The main difference, the one they're putting out is that Colt mag deal. So it's main difference would be the Glock magazines. I haven't been super up on their stuff. They might be putting out a Glock mag one as well. I could tell you that some of it's the price, the last round bolt hole that works. It's just different guns. It's the same as asking, the 50 guys that make forged AR lowers, what's the difference between your forged lower and this forged lower? It's, what time it was when the hammer hit it. People are going to have to judge for themselves. I'm not going to tell you which brands are better than which and who's better than us and what's not. And it's a preference thing like anything else. We talked about it with car brands or anything else. It's a personal preference thing for a lot of people, and then I think a lot of it rides on price as well.
I think my answer was a little more of a
Salty?
Okay, a little saltier. I said that the biggest difference is that New Frontier Armory makes one and Stag makes the other. But
And we're giving one away to the AR-15 podcast.
Yeah.
Step up, Stag, come on.
Exactly.
so
Well,
I tell you what, I was really, really impressed with what I saw at SHOT, and we're really thrilled with how gracious you've been to basically give a round of applause to our listeners for just being dedicated, and it's a great industry that we get to just kind of touch the hem of, and we look enviously at you sitting in the chair and being able to drive one of the dynamic cogs of the industry. And so we really appreciate you coming on and just kind of sharing with all of us everything that's going on over there at New Frontier Armory.
Oh, it's cool. I joke around a lot, coming out a lot, and at some point I was going to approach you guys, and you beat me to it. So I'm a long-time listener of the show, so it's been pretty cool to be on. I appreciate it.
Cool. So you will be able to get all the details on the 9mm carbine in this episode 166, the New Frontier Armory 9mm carbine giveaway. You can sign up at our Facebook page, facebook.com/AR15 podcast. You can also go to the network's homepage, firearmsradio.tv, and sign up there at the AR-15 podcast part of that homepage. So far, just about approaching 500 people signing up, and somebody's going to get that rifle. We're a quarter of the way through. It's going to end May 31st, and then I will get to see it. I'll get to cry a tear, and then we will send it off to somebody who hopefully has the proper ID or the proper name submitted for the contest. And that is all out of the graciousness of New Frontier Armory. Stop by their Facebook page. If you're looking to do business with a 9mm carbine, check them out. I've been doing business with them for 6 years. They're one of my favorite shops, and they always take care of me and the other customers that are my friends that go there. So what's the website, David, that they can check out?
www.newfrontierarmory.com or on Facebook /New Frontier Armory. And JD, if you're really good over the next couple of weeks, I might have to take you out to our secret testing grounds to and let you test fire the build. So.
Oh, Dan, that's just not fair. That is just not fair. When are you guys going to open up a Texas presence?
Well, David, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the AR-15 podcast. If you have any questions or comments, you can send them to ar15.podcast@gmail.com. That's ar15.podcast@gmail.com. Make sure you subscribe and listen to the podcast for free on iTunes and Stitcher. Leave a review. The show places higher, and you guys, because of that and several other things, we're seeing about an increase of about 1,500 listeners a week to the show over the past 3 months. So you guys are doing some pretty cool things, promoting word of mouth and by your reviews there on iTunes. You can also share your pictures with us on Instagram at AR15 Podcast. Use that same hashtag. You can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/AR15 Podcast. Don't forget to check out the other great podcasts on the Firearms Radio Network. You can use the Brownells affiliate link for all your AR-15 parts needs at firearmsradio.tv. Reed, I think this has been one of our good ones here in the last couple of months with David talking about this 9mm carbine.
Well, I certainly hope so, but I tell you what, even if it's not, I really enjoyed talking to David. So, David, thanks you.
Guys. Thank you, guys.
All right, everybody, have a great week, and we will talk to you soon.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv.